Jobs Talk Show. And before I move ahead, let me read out this important disclaimer. By watching our videos, you agree and understand that the information provided by our experts and attorneys, including comments and replies from users, is not legal advice. Use of information is at your own risk. All right, after this important disclaimer, welcome back, everyone. I'm Rashmi Bharara, your host, and today's episode on immigration and jobs talk show is going to be an amazing one because today we are going to explore the intricate world of the US immigration and its impact on job opportunities and aspiring immigrants. Whether you are a student hoping to study in the US, or a tourist planning your next adventure, or a professional navigating the visa process, this show is designed to provide you with the insights and the tools you need to succeed. Today, we have a special guest who brings a wealth of experience and knowledge to our discussion, Mandy Feuerbacher. With over 7 years as a US diplomat and visa officer, Mandy has conducted more than 100,000 visa interviews across the globe, including in China, Mexico, and Hong Kong. Her unique perspective allows her to understand not just the technicalities of visa applications, but also the human side of the process. Mandy realized that many applicants struggle not due to lack of qualifications, but because they often don't know how to effectively communicate their situations during interviews. This insight led her to co found an immigration law firm with her partner, Travis, also a former visa officer. Together, they specialize in helping individuals navigate the complexities of visa applications, particularly F-1, J-1, B-1, B-2, and H-1B visas. And in today's episode, Mandy will dive deep into the topic of F-1 and B-1, B-2 visa denials under the Trump administration. She'll share her expertise on why many qualified applicants face challenges and offer practical tips on how to improve communication during visa interviews. So, if you're looking for guidance on how to enhance your chances of success in your visa journey, you won't want to miss this. Join us as we learn from Mandy's extensive experience and gain valuable insights that could make all the difference in your immigration journey. So, without any further ado, let's get started, and let's give Mandy a very warm welcome. Mandy, welcome to Immigration and Jobs Talk Show. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, Rajni. Thank you so much for having me. And you did a great job pronouncing my last name because most people don't get it right.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for noticing that. And Mandy, this because this show today we are going to talk about visa denial, especially B1, B2, and F1 under Trump administration. So before I talk about the current administration, because Trump is back, right, with his I don't know if we can call aggressive administration, because that's what the social media is saying and the media is saying. I would actually like to understand how was the scenario in his first term, and how was his administration under the first term for because right now they're saying that they are going to focus more on illegal immigration. They are going to be
Yes.
hard on them. But then we spoke to a lot of attorneys, and they said that in their last term they not only went after the illegal ones, but they also made it very strict for the legal immigrants too. So if
Yeah.
I would like to, I would like to come to you and ask you. So how was, his first term, especially for B1
Yeah.
visa and F1 visas?
Yeah. So that's a great question, Rajni. And I was still a visa officer during the previous Trump administration. So I have some experience with what that process was like. And I think the news is actually good for some of our foreign nationals because, it's a process. Visa processing for the US government is something that has been around for a really long time, and it doesn't change overnight, even with a new administration. So, even though during the last Trump administration, there were a lot of things that were implemented, we saw the Muslim ban, which is restricting, visas to people from certain Muslim countries. There are also, things that just took a while for it to get through the system. So I think that's good and bad because I think there are so many foreign nationals that are nervous right now and they're like, oh my gosh, on January 20th, the entire system is going to be different. It's actually not going to be so quick overnight. And so I think everybody can take a deep breath. The US embassies and consulates are not going to close. people will continue coming to the United States to study and to work and to immigrate. And to be honest, nobody knows 100% exactly what is going to happen. Trump has only hinted at certain aspects of it, but I think that, most of the time it's not going to affect you as much as you think it will. Like, for example, the Muslim ban didn't impact students. And so I think everybody just needs to take a deep breath right now and not start panicking or doing things out of fear. I've had a lot of clients come to me, with some unique situations that say, oh, okay, well, my parents brought me to the US. I don't have any status. Do I need to leave right now and try to get a visa, even though I have, all of this unlawful presence? And my first reaction is don't do anything. Don't act out of a place of fear, because we don't really know what is going to happen. And so I would hate for people to make decisions that would be detrimental to their visa status before the administration even comes in. So for now, I would say if you're someone who already has a visa interview coming up before January 20th, just do the best you can to prepare for those interviews. And if you're someone that, doesn't have any plans right now to get a visa and you can wait a bit, that's what I would do. I would not do anything, brash or in a hurry before we actually know what is going to happen and what, once Trump takes over, what he's going to implement, because he has said things that is helpful to students. Like I read an article somewhere that said, Trump said, oh, I think any student who comes to the US should automatically get a green card. That's actually a positive scenario for students. So it's possible that it may not all be bad. So I just want everybody to take a deep breath right now and not, act in a way that, is actually going to hurt their situation before anything has actually changed.
Right, right. Thank you so much for that great answer, Mandy. Because a lot of people are worried, tensed, and also are thinking too much about what's going to happen or what's not going to happen. So thank you so much for that relieving answer. Um,
Yeah.
and but Mandy, can we expect like more visa denials in 2025
Mhm.
and forward until the Trump administration is at least there? And can we
Yeah.
expect more long processing times?
Yes, I definitely think there will be longer processing times. And I think that the trend is that there's likely going to be tougher visa interviews, tougher denials, because what I saw when I was a visa officer in the first Trump administration is that Trump was coming out with all these executive orders. There was Proclamation 10043, which said that Chinese students who had gone to certain universities would be banned from coming to the US. Unfortunately, that proclamation is still active. And so Chinese students are having trouble with that. So the trend is that the interviews will be more difficult. However, do what you can to prepare. Don't panic unnecessarily, but just take the steps that you need to in order to prepare for the visa interview. So if you're someone that is planning to come to the US next year to study either for your bachelor's degree or your master's degree or a PhD, or for any reason you're getting a visa, just make sure that you're doing everything you can to prepare for the interview, because the culture of visa officers actually hasn't changed in a very long time.
Mhm.
Presidents come and go,
Yeah.
but when the new president comes in, or I guess President Trump in his second term, the visa officers will still be there. It's not like they all leave and then new officers come in, right? They still have their jobs. They're going to be doing the same job on January 20th and January 21st, right? So it's not like there's an automatic switchover of different officers. So how they see visa applications and how they interview foreign nationals has been the same for a very long time. Sometimes they will be a little bit tougher given sort of the rhetoric of the president. If the president says, hey, we don't want anybody coming in, we want to be extra hard on foreign nationals. Yes, eventually it does trickle down, but it's not going to be like an overnight thing.
Mhm.
And so one of the things that my partner Travis and I have worked really hard on, because we're former visa officers and we've interviewed, over 100,000 visa applicants, and we know exactly what visa officers are looking for. The first thing to know is that the visa interview itself is incredibly short. Okay, some of you may already know that if you've been through an interview, but especially if you're coming from a place that has very high volume, if you're applying in, a US embassy or consulate in India or in China or in Mexico, hundreds of thousands of people come through the consulates every day. And so you probably will only have about 30 seconds to 3 minutes at your interview. Now think about that, 30 seconds, that's a very short amount of time, Rajni. Like, if you're someone who has that interview coming up, are you ready? In those 30 seconds, are you going to take advantage of the time that you have in front of the visa officer to make sure that they understand that you're eligible for the visa? I think that one of the biggest problems that I see from students and from people applying for B1, B2 visas, and even for employment visas is they think that it's a very passive experience, that they can just go in, wait for the questions, they'll answer what's asked of them. But in fact, the way that US visa law is written is that the burden is on you. It is actually your responsibility to make sure that the visa officer understands your situation. It's not their responsibility to ask you, tons of questions until they understand you, right? So if you're someone who's not prepared for the interview, who's not ready to sort of present your situation in an easy to understand fashion, then the visa officer, after 1 or 2 questions, might decide, okay, I've heard enough. I'm ready to just deny this visa. I don't understand what this person's saying. I don't understand, where they're coming from, how they plan to pay for their education, what they plan to do after they graduate. And they might just deny your visa in 30 seconds. When I was a visa officer, because visa officers are so concerned with being as efficient as possible, they're always looking for quick denials and quick approvals. So you want to make sure that you're prepared for the visa interview so that you can be a quick approval and not someone that after 30 seconds, they're like, okay, I've heard everything I need to hear and I'm just ready to deny this person. That's not what you want.
So Mandy, what is that magic answer that one can give, as soon as they see the visa officer and the visa officer start questioning them? So because, like you said, they only have 30 seconds to 3 minutes of time, right? So what is that best answer that they can give so that, they get the stamp of visa approved?
Yeah. So Rajni, that's such a good question. And it's hard to give an answer that fits everybody's situation because everybody's situation is a little bit different. And so what I would say is that you most definitely want to make sure that you are being proactive at your interview. You don't want to give a one-word answer. So let's just say you're applying for your F-1 student visa, and the first question the visa officer asks is, okay, why are you going to the US? Now, if you say to study or for school, then you've basically wasted this opportunity to give more information about yourself. So I always recommend that people be proactive, to give, a well-prepared, you don't want to rehearse anything. You don't want to memorize anything because these officers can always tell when you have an answer memorized, but you want to give a very authentic answer that shares with them all of the information that they're looking for in one question. And so here are some things that could be helpful. You want to talk about what school you're going to, what's your major, how are you planning to fund your education, what are you planning to do with your degree after? And I realize this is a lot of information, but this is why my partner and I, one of our passion projects is after interviewing so many visa applicants and realizing so many people are not prepared for the interview, is to come up with our online training course that walks you step by step from how to complete your DS-160 form to avoid red flags to how do you answer the first question at your visa interview? Because every word that you say is important. You have 30 seconds, right? From the language that you use to how you convey your situation, how you establish a connection with the visa officer. Every single thing is important. And basically in these online courses, we've poured our heart and soul into it. So it is a little bit lengthy. You have to watch like 4 hours of lessons on how you talk to the visa officer, how you answer certain questions, like about
Mhm.
funding, how you answer questions about your family. Do you have
Mhm.
family in the US? And there are so many different types of situations that, I always get clients just wanting the magic bullet and the magic answer that fits everybody. But unfortunately, that's impossible. And that's why you have to take these online courses so you can figure out what situation applies to you. Because any complications in your situation can increase your chances of a visa denial, and you
Mhm.
don't want that, right? You want to make sure that you're somebody who, after a 2-minute interview, is immediately approved, and not somebody who's going to get denied after just one question. Because I get so many of my clients that say, I was only asked one question, I didn't even get a chance to say anything before I was denied.
Okay, wow. So, you really will have to wait and make an impression, and not a lot, if you try to rehearse that a lot, so that can again lead to a visa denial, right? Because
Yes.
that's when the visa officer will also get an idea, or will also think that, you already have practiced what you are supposed to say. So
Yes.
you don't want to
I
make
know. And
that
it's
impression. Yeah. Uh-huh.
exactly. It's so hard because I think visa officers, because they do this every single day and they
Yeah.
interview over 150 people a day, they get very good at reading people, and they can immediately tell, is this person memorizing or are they actually listening to my questions? So,
Mhm.
another tip that I usually have for people is to be very careful with
Mhm.
paying attention, listening to the visa officer's questions, because most of the colleagues that I worked with, they like to switch up their questions. Sometimes they might ask you, what did you have for breakfast today? Or, oh, what are some of your favorite hobbies outside of school? And if they start with that question and you answer, well, I plan to go to, you know, USC for my bachelor's degree. Well, you're not really answering the right question, and they immediately know that you're memorizing something. So,
Mhm.
again, you always want to pay crucial attention to what the officer is asking you so that you're answering the right question. And one of the other things that I think our visa coaching courses provides is to
Mhm.
help you understand exactly what to expect, because confidence is so important in this interview. I would say it's at least 50% of the interview. And so many people go into the interview not knowing what to expect. What is the officer going to ask me? And you're already going to be really nervous on that day. That's totally normal. But
Mhm.
when you know exactly what to expect, it helps you calm your nerves so that you can put your best foot forward and be confident during the visa interview process. And once you're confident and you're at peace and you know exactly what's going on, then that actually reassures the visa officer that you are someone who is clearly eligible for the visa, who knows your situation, who knows what your purpose is, you're motivated to go study, and that helps them feel more comfortable and confident approving your visa. So it's really more of an art, not a science.
Wow. Okay. I think that's a great way to put it. Yeah, it's more of an art, not a science, right? So, like you said.
Yeah.
So, but Mandy, before I actually, dive into our questions, and also because a lot of people have also started posting their questions, Nidhi, Akshay, and then Kavita. So, I'm definitely going to take your questions, guys, but in a bit. But before I take their questions and also ask the questions that we have prepared. So, Mandy, just the way you dress up and also makes an impression, and or is it okay that what you can wear whatever that you feel like, or you have to dress accordingly if you're going for the interview?
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. So I think it's really important to dress like you respect the interview.
Okay.
So, again, no one size fits all answer, but if you're someone who's a student, it's a really good idea to dress like you're going to, at least, business casual. I would say, a collared shirt for the guys, maybe a blouse for the ladies. You
Hmm.
want to dress like you respect the interview. I remember as a visa officer, if I
Hmm.
used to see a student come to my window and they're in, like, sweatpants that have holes in it and like a tank top, I would think, okay, is this person actually a serious student? Is
Yeah.
this the kind of person that I think would want to show up to class every day and pay attention to class? So that first impression is really important.
Hmm.
But, it's not true that you should always dress the same way. Let's say that you are an art major and you're someone who's about to get your master's degree in architecture. Now, if you want to dress very artsy in some way that represents you as an artist and a designer, I would 100% agree with that, because you're not someone who needs to be dressed up in a suit for an interview. You
Mhm.
really want what you wear to not only be respectful and professional, but also represent who you are as a person.
Wow, that's a great tip. Thank you so much again for answering the question, Mandy. Let me quickly, ask a few more questions. So, also, Mandy, what anticipated changes can we expect in F-1 and B-1, B-2 visa processing under Trump's new administration?
Yeah, I think what we can expect is that, like under uh, in his first administration, when
Mhm.
he came out with a bunch of executive orders, he said, okay, buy American, hire American. That was
Mhm.
giving a lot of people problems when they were applying, for H-1B visas or L-1 visas. I think what we can expect is that President Trump will probably come out with a bunch of orders and say, okay, you got to be tougher on these visa applicants. You got to ask these questions.
Mhm.
Now, whether or not visa officers immediately follow that guidance, they probably won't, because they've been so used to doing their jobs a certain way. Now,
Mhm.
over time, as the months go on, it's possible that they will start being tougher
Mhm.
on the visa applicants and during the interviews. And
Mhm.
so, if you're someone who's going in for your interview in January, it's probably going to be the same. However, if you're going in August, it might be a little bit tougher. And
Okay.
so it's hard to say exactly in what area they'll be tougher, but I would say, visa interview preparation used to be something that's just, oh, if you want to do it, do it. If you don't, you might still pass your interview, no problem. But more and more, what I'm seeing is that it is a must. If you're someone who cares about going to the US, having a pathway to travel to the US in the future,
Mhm.
whether for tourism or for business or to study someday, you have to take this interview seriously. It's not something that you can just hope that everything works out without knowing anything about what's going on, which is why we created these visa coaching courses, so that you can take the time to understand, what is the visa officer looking for? How
Mhm.
can you answer your questions in a way that helps them reach their conclusion that you're eligible for a visa? You know, one of the things that I always tell my own clients is, you definitely want to show and not tell at the visa interview. Because if you're someone that just goes to your interview and says, I promise I'm going to leave the US someday, I promise I'm going to follow the rules. Well, the visa officer is not really going to believe that, because it sounds just too convenient, too memorized, right? It's all
Mhm.
about how you demonstrate through your situation in your own life why you qualify for the visa. And that takes a little bit more effort to understand. Another thing I always tell my own clients is, you really want to make the job of the visa officer as easy as possible to approve your visa,
Mm.
right? You don't want to say anything crazy that's going to make them think, wait, what? Like, why did this person say that? Because I get a lot of clients coming to me who say, well, I want to be 100% honest. I want to share all of this information with them about the last time I visited the US. And sometimes I hear that and I'm like, okay, that is really confusing. And if you say that to a visa officer, you're definitely going to get denied, or at least put into administrative processing. So
Mhm.
it's a balance of what you want to share with the visa officer. And you definitely want to be truthful and honest always, but you
Mhm.
want to share with them information that's going to be helpful to your case, so that they can understand in a very short amount of time that you're eligible for the visa.
Wow. Okay. So, Mandy, you also said, while answering, you also said, just make sure you do everything you can. So, when you talk about just make sure you do everything you can, what exactly do you mean by that? What exactly, like, what should a person do? Let's suppose if their B-1, B-2 visa interviews coming up, or the F-1 visa is interviews
Yeah.
coming up. So, what is that they can do best so that, their visas are approved in terms of, I mean, you already have talked about the way you should dress up and your magic answer,
Yes.
but then
Yeah.
documents and other things, what more that one person can do?
Yeah. That's a great question. So I think it all starts with your DS 160. Excuse me. So your DS 160 is your visa application form. So this is something that you have to fill out online before you actually show up for your interview. And I remember, as a visa officer, when I used to, the DS 160 visa application is the first thing that the visa officer looks at before they start the interview. They scroll down the application really quickly. They look at the points that they really care about, like what your current job is, where are you going in the US? How long you plan to stay?
Mhm.
Do you have any family in the US? And this form generally is filled with mistakes from what I've seen as a visa officer.
Okay.
I'll give you one really easy one.
Mhm.
Sometimes a visa applicant will come to the window. I pull up the DS-160, I'm looking through it, and even for their parents' information, they will put the name do not know or, not applicable or something like that. And I'm thinking in my head as a visa officer, how can you not know your parents' names? How can you not know, where they live or what they do?
Mhm.
But I think the biggest problem in this process is that overseas, many foreign nationals trust visa agents to take care of the entire process, from filling out the DS-160 to, coaching them through the visa interview. And sometimes they even receive really bad advice from agents like, oh, if you say this to the visa officer, I guarantee you'll get your visa. Okay, no one can ever guarantee that you'll get your visa approved. That decision is for the visa officer alone. So I would say if any agent or anybody trying to help you with the visa application process says you have to lie, or if you say this, you'll definitely get your visa approved, run the other way, because they are either scamming you or just trying to make a quick dollar off of you. That's absolutely not true. And
Mm.
so this is not a process that you can delegate to someone else. This is not a process that you can outsource to someone else who has done it before, because only you know your own situation best. And if you're not honest on your DS-160 application, or you're not honest at your interview, you can actually get an ineligibility or a permanent ban to the United States. And I have seen this happen to some of my own clients before they come to me. Somebody told them to lie on their DS-160 form or lie at the interview, and the visa officer finds out about it. And then all of a sudden it becomes a huge problem, when if they had been honest in the first place, it would not have been that big of a deal. So again, I would say take responsibility for your visa process. Don't trust someone else to do it. Don't trust an aunt or an uncle or your parents. You know your situation better than anybody, and you need to be reviewing that DS-160 application form to make sure everything is accurate, it's complete, you are getting the right information. And actually, one of our coaching courses for both the F-1 and the B-1, B-2, if you buy our complete course, there is actually a DS-160 course where we walk you through the DS-160, like in a screen share. We walk you through every question and what you need to make sure that you answer correctly and what you don't miss, so that you're being as honest as possible, but you're also sharing information that really helps your situation and isn't causing any red flags with the visa officer, because that is something they definitely look at. And so it's not just the interview, it starts with the DS-160 process. So definitely take that course so that you know how to answer the questions. How much should you elaborate? What should you mention? And this is not a process that you can just give to someone else, because even the visa application itself, when you submit it at the end, says that you have full knowledge of what you submit. And that, it's not like you can just say, oh, well, my agent told me to say this, and then you won't be responsible. You will be held responsible for what you put on the DS-160 form.
Okay, wow, that's a great, insightful, and detailed answer. Thank you so much for that, Mandy. And also, are there other key factors also that visa officers are looking at, or is just that their forms and maybe some of their documents? Mhm.
Yeah, so the form so the form is really, really important. I would say probably like a 30% of the visa interview, like 30% is the form. But the other things that are important, you definitely, if you're applying as a student, you want to bring your I-20, so the officer can see what school you're going to. They sometimes like to look at the funding section, if you're paying for it all yourself, did you get financial aid? Are you getting a loan? And then funding documents are really important. If you are funding the education yourself or your family is, definitely bringing some bank statements that shows that you can afford your education in the US is important. If your parents have real estate, if you have real estate in your own name, bring those documents along as well. But
Mhm.
one thing to be aware of, even though I tell everyone bring all the documents, don't be surprised if the visa officer doesn't look at them.
Mm.
And this is because when I was a visa officer, they have a culture of saying no documents. I just remember all of my managers, they used to walk around behind the visa line watching all the officers interview. And if they see someone rifling through too many documents or looking through documents, they will actually come up and talk to you. Remember, like, no documents, we don't look at documents. And there's a few reasons for this. One reason is because documents can be faked, right? So for all the places I've worked at, they would have a black market for documents where visa applicants can go out and buy invitation letters and bank statements. And so that's why visa officers don't trust the documents.
Mm-hmm.
Number two is they don't have the time to look through everything. I know so many foreign nationals who get so nervous about the interview that they don't even want to talk to the officer. They'll just shove a big stack of documents under the window and say, just look at these documents. Like, you don't even have to talk to me. That absolutely does not work. The visa officer prefers to make a decision based on the interview. So even if you have everything written down in a document and your whole life story, you give it to the visa officer, 99% of the time they will not even look at it. They will just say, no, I want you to tell me, why you think you're eligible for this visa, or tell me why you're going to the US. So the interview is the most important part of the whole process. Definitely bring the documents, because sometimes the officers will say, oh, okay, well, show me the bank statements that you have for funding your education. And you don't want to not have it, but don't be surprised if they don't want to see it. So I would say put all your emphasis on filling out your DS-160 correctly. Being prepared to speak to the officer at the interview and how you communicate is really important. And the documents are kind of just for backup in case the visa officer wants to see it. You don't want to not bring anything, because in case the officer wants to see bank statements and you don't have them, then they have to put your case into administrative processing, and then it's more delays, and sometimes things get lost in the mail. You don't want that to happen to you. So bring everything, but make sure that you're ready for the interview. That's more important than any document. And in fact, I know lots of visa applicants who pass their interviews with not really bringing any documents. If they're students, they just have their I-20, but as long as they're able to explain their situation in an easy to understand way, sometimes the visa officer is ready to approve and they don't even need to see bank statements. So the interview is key, and the DS-160.
Okay. Thank you so much again, Mandy. I'm going to jump into the questions that we are getting from the viewers. But before I do that, one important question, because there are a lot of people, who go for their interviews and then their visa gets denied. So they have this important question. So I would like to know from you, what are the next steps if your US visa application is denied, and how can you navigate this challenging situation?
Yeah. So a visa can be denied really for any reason at all.
Mm-hmm.
The visa officer, most of the time, will never tell you why they're denying your visa. And one reason is because they're trying to move really quickly. They don't have time to explain to everybody. But I also know from personal experience as a visa officer, if I ever try to tell someone, well, here's why I denied your visa, what do you think happens? Then the person starts arguing with you and is like, no, you didn't understand. Can you give me another chance? And then they never leave the window, right? So visa officers have learned that the best way to deny someone is just to give them a standard letter that really says nothing. You're denied under Section 214B, and they ask you to leave. And so if your US visa application has been denied, here's what I would do. If you've never done any sort of visa coaching course or worked with an expert on your visa interview, I would say, don't just try again without doing something different. Clearly, you did that the first time and it didn't work. So you can't expect that if you just go in again, that you're going to get a different outcome. What I generally recommend is take an expert coaching course. You don't have to take ours. There's probably other former visa officers. We've been doing this for a long time, so we really believe in our course, but there's other types of resources you can reach out to. But make sure that you do something different. Talk to an expert or take our online coaching course. And once you take that course, you're like, oh my gosh, I didn't do that for my first interview. I didn't fill out my DS-160 application like this, or I didn't start my interview like this. And you're going to have an idea how to actually be properly prepared for your visa interview.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if after this first step, you take the course and you're still not able to get your visa approved, now is time for a little bit more custom strategy, right? You need a little bit of additional help. And that's where you can book a one-on-one consultation with either me or my partner or another former visa officer. And you can figure out, okay, this is the questions I was asked, this is what I said, and this is what's going on. And I wasn't able to get my visa approved. And a lot of times we can give you some more assistance. But the reason why I say try the visa coaching online course first is because it's a lot more cost effective, it's cheaper. No former visa officer has all the time it takes to help you really do everything, step by step and walk you through the steps. You just have to do the work. You have to take the online lessons. You have to review the sections that you don't understand, like how to explain your funding, how to explain why you're getting a second master's degree, why you have so much family in the US, a lot of these complications that could cause your visa to be denied. And then if that doesn't work, then maybe you need to, find a different resource or go a little bit deeper and do a one-on-one consultation, which is a little bit more expensive. Now, one of the other things that's great about these online courses is that you actually get exclusive access to live Q&As to a former visa officer like my partner and I, and we actually will work through your case with you or do mock interviews with you or answer any remaining questions that you have after taking our course. We do that twice a month. And so that can be very helpful to people who take our course, but they still have remaining questions or they want to practice their interview and see if it's good enough or if there's any feedback that they need to do better. But what I always tell people is there is no shortcut. You just got to put in the time and effort and understand this process. What is the visa officer looking for? How can you make their job easier to approve your case? And you just got to put in the blood, sweat, and tears to do it right.
Yeah, that's true. Thank you so much again for that detailed and insightful answer, Mandy. And I'm getting a lot of questions here from our viewers. So let me quickly take some of them before we dive into, our next question. So actually, Shubham is here and he says, does he have to mention it again in the DS-160 if he goes for stamping again?
Yes. So usually if you've been denied a visa before, on the DS-160 form, it will say, have you ever been denied a US visa? Obviously, you want to be honest in this answer because that's the quickest way for the visa officer to catch you in a lie. I remember there were people that used to say, no, I've never been interviewed before. I've never had a denial. And that's information that the visa officer has accessible in their computer system. So you definitely want to be honest. And you can just say that you've been denied before under Section 214B. But this time, again, it's very important how you start your interview and how you introduce yourself to the officer in the very first question. And hopefully, once you take our course, you're ready for that question. You don't want to waste that first question by saying, oh, I'm going to study or, giving a one-word answer because these days that is not good enough.
Okay, so Shubham, I hope you have got your answer. He actually has one more question which he posted before this. So let me quickly read that out. He says, I'm in the US, H-1B. My sister married and in India wants to visit the US on a visitor's visa. She has visited Singapore and Thailand earlier. What can be done to increase the chances to get visa?
I think her being able to explain clearly, how long she plans to visit you for, what your visa status is in the US. If you're on an H-1B visa, you probably have a really good job. For her to be able to convey that from the very first question will definitely help her. And she also wants to talk about her ties in her home country. Is she married? Does she have children? Does she have a really good job? Does she own real estate? All of those are very important things to bring up. And when you go in for the interview, the interview is pretty conversational. So it's not like she can just go in and start, reciting bullet points of everything that makes her qualified. It's still, I think American visa officers really value honesty and authenticity. So how can she share this information in a way that makes sense and that helps the visa officer really like her and want to help her and feel like, oh, okay, I understand where this person's coming from. I can approve the visa because I better understand her situation from how she's explaining it. And it takes a little bit of practice.
Okay, so Shubham, I hope again you have got your answer. Thank you so much for your question. If you have a follow-up, please continue posting them in the comments below. Okay, so I think I've read, he says, please read the second last comment. So, Shubham, I've read both of them. I hope you have got the answer. In case you have a follow up, please continue posting them in the comments below. We'll be more than happy to take it. And now let me take Akshay's question. So, Mandy, Akshay says, I already have a MS degree and used my OPT and STEM OPT and then returned back to my home country. Now, I want to pursue a PhD and apply for a new F-1 visa. What will the visa officer ask or check?
Yeah. So actually, that's a great question. I think the good news about your situation is that you are a progressing student. That's what visa officers like to see. They don't like to see people always operating at the same level. We get a lot of students who are applying for a second or a third master's degree, and that's when the visa officer feels like, why are you still at the same level? But because you're pursuing a PhD, that means you're moving up in your academic career. So that's really good. And if you're applying for an F-1 visa, I think the visa officer will probably ask about your master's degree and your OPT and what have you been doing since you left the US? Why do you want to go back for a higher degree? How will this help you? And what do you plan to do with this? Once you get your PhD, what do you plan to do with that? How will it further your career? How will it benefit you in your home country? And so you really want to think through what your plans are in the future.
Okay, so Akshay, I hope you have also got your answer. If you have a follow up, please continue posting it in the comments below, and we will be taking them and we'll be asking them from Mandy. I still have questions from Nidhi, but before I take Nidhi's, I would actually like to take Swapna's question. She says. Sometimes, without asking any question in detail or listening to the answers, what applicant would like to answer, visa officers simply say it's denied. What do you think
Mm,
might have triggered the visa officer at that time, and how to
mhm,
avoid this clueless situation?
mm. Yeah, so I think sometimes when people answer questions, the way that they answer is either a little bit monotonous or they answer it in such a way where everything sounds exactly the same. And so when a visa officer is listening to you, they're trying to pick out the most important facts from your case. And if you're someone who is not good at being personal or really connecting with someone in conversation, this is something that you might want to practice. And so again, like it's important to be ready with the answers, be positive. And I always tell people, like, it's important to be positive about the interaction. I know so many people are really scared of the visa interview and they're really nervous. So it makes them, kind of shrink down and say things really quietly. And it makes it difficult for the visa officer to hear you or understand you. I would say, try to be positive, try to show enthusiasm for why you want to go study in the US, because I think visa officers really connect with that, right? They want to know that someone who's going to get this visa is going to go to the US and get the best education possible in the world, right? So, how can you showcase your enthusiasm and be positive during the interview? That actually can really help you. And so, if you're someone who has already been denied, again, don't just try to go back in without changing anything. You definitely want to do something different so that you're more prepared and you can address what was previously lacking in your last interview.
Okay, Swapna, I hope you have got your answer. She has a follow up though. She says, how pending 221G would affect your next visa attempts?
Yeah, so that's a great question, Swapna. So a 221G basically means that the officer has decided that they cannot make a decision on your visa application in that moment. And so 221G or administrative processing is, either they give you a letter and it says they need to see further documentation, whatever it is, they can't approve or deny your case in that moment. It could affect your next visa interview attempt. Now, if your case has been put into 221G administrative processing without an outcome and you decide to apply again, most likely they will just say, okay, we already told you that you have to wait. They're not going to be able to approve your case if your previous application is still in administrative processing. Now, let's just say that if your case went into administrative processing and it was later approved, the next time you apply, it's possible that that could affect your next application. There are many different types of 221G administrative processing. Some things, once it's done, you won't have this problem again. Other times you might get the same administrative processing each time. And so without really knowing exactly what happened at the interview, it's hard to say. But once you get this kind of outcome, it's important to work with an expert to figure out how to handle a 221G situation so that you are maximizing your chances for success and visa approval even through this process.
Okay. Okay. So thank you, Swapna. I hope you have got your answer. So actually, Akshay and Shubham both are back with their follow-ups, Mandy. And Akshay
Mhm.
says, I took a year break after I got back from USA. How can I explain that?
Hmm. Yeah, I think it really depends on what you did in that break. Did you work? Did you have an internship? Did you take a gap year and just decide that you're going to travel around the world? I think as long as you're honest about it and you can explain what you got out of that process, that's helpful. Visa officers are not always looking for exactly the same types of answer from everyone. They want one that is truthful to your situation. And just because you didn't work doesn't mean it's a bad thing. And just because you worked, that could be a bad thing if it didn't fit in with your major or what your plans are in the future. So, again, it's important to properly frame your situation to show the visa officer that what you did makes sense for you getting your next visa.
Okay, so Akshay, I hope you have got your answer. Let me quickly read out Shubham's question. He says, one of my cousins is on H-1B and had a court case against his name in India, which has been dismissed now. He provided the details in DS-160 and got the H-1B approval. He has recently changed his employer. Should he again mention about the case history in DS-160?
I would, just to be sure that the visa officer doesn't assume that you're trying to keep it from them. Now, since he's had his visa approved last time, this probably means that it's okay and that they're still okay with issuing him the visa, even though he had this issue and it was dismissed in the past. But I think sometimes visa officers, they almost like to use the DS 160 as a little bit of a test. Like, is this person going to be honest with me? Are they going to be truthful? So as long as you just mention briefly that, yes, I had this past, it was dismissed, but my H-1B visa was approved after that last time, then I think that will show the visa officer that, they're still eligible for a visa. I think one thing to know is that visa officers can very easily look at your previous DS 160 applications. And so sometimes they like to look through them to make sure that they're consistent. So you don't want to completely change your answers every single time. I mean, hopefully you're being honest throughout the whole thing, but if you constantly change your answers, that could be a red flag for the visa officer.
Okay, okay. So, Swapna says, how important is it to return USA before new Trump administration? How will it affect when we have a valid visa?
Yeah, so that's a great question. I would say like if you're a student and you're starting school in January, oftentimes you're starting before January 20th anyways. So you should definitely come back before school starts. If you have a valid visa, then you're probably okay for the duration of that valid visa, right? So if your student visa is valid for the next 4 years, you should be fine, but you never know. Anything can change with the incoming administration. But I would say because we don't know what those changes are, there's no need to do anything drastic or to go for a new visa stamp when you already have a visa that's valid for the next 4 years.
Okay. Um, Thank you so much, Swapna, again for your question. Let me quickly take Nidhi's question also because I have few more questions that I would like to ask from you, Mandy. So Nidhi here says, I applied for a B1, B2 visa for a professional conference and had the invite
Mhm,
letter, financial proof, and everything in order, but they denied me
mhm,
on the spot. They didn't even
mm.
ask for my documents. Why does this happen? And can I fix it next time?
So, Nidhi, I think you definitely can fix this next time. It sounds like to me that because this was a very quick interview and they just denied you right away, that perhaps this has to do more with your delivery. how are you answering that first question? Why are you going to the US? How are you presenting yourself? Are you able to explain things in a way that lends it to the visa officer paying attention to what you're saying? And a lot of it is about that initial connection. And take our course. I guess this would be the B1, B2 visa application if you're going for a conference, but conferences are great reasons for somebody to be eligible for a B1, B2 visa. And so, again, you want to kind of also review your background and your history. If you have a lot of family in the US, if you've studied in the US before and you have an overstay, if any of these complications could lend itself to a visa denial. So you want to make sure that you're ready to address any of those issues. And so the best way to do that is to take our B1, B2 course, make sure that you're ready for all of the potential questions that are coming up. And we also go quite a bit into what the visa officer can see, what are some reasons why they deny people. And so I would just want to know exactly what happened at the interview and make sure that you're not making the same mistakes again.
Right. So, Nidhi, make sure that you get that B1, B2 visa course. And also, Mandy, if you can also please explain a bit more, how can taking this course will benefit them, and what can they expect from that course?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have two flagship courses right now. One is for the F1 visa and one is for the B1, B2 visa. So if you're someone who's applying for your F1 or your B1, B2 visa and you have an interview in the next month or so, that's the perfect time to take the course, is about a month before your interview. And what it walks you through is, number one, how to complete the DS-160 course so that you don't create any red flags. Because again, this is the first thing that the visa officer pulls up as you're walking to their window and before they start the interview. We also walk you through step by step how to start your interview. When the visa officer asks you the first question, what should your answer be? How do you communicate your situation? And we have a formula that we've developed, having worked with so many people who are preparing for their visa interviews and also having interviewed so many people as visa officers, that we have seen work for a large majority of visa applicants. This is how you should structure your interview. This is how you answer questions. And then we walk through all of the additional things that could be applicable to your situation. Like if you have family in the US, perhaps this is your second master's degree. Doesn't mean that you're not qualified for the visa. You still can qualify, but what are some things to address? Visa officers really care about funding. If you're a student, how do you plan to pay for your education? How can you convince them by discussing your situation and properly framing it that convinces them that you qualify for the visa? And then if you have anything additional, like perhaps you have a pending green card, and one big reason that people are denied their visas is sometimes your answers are just too vague. Or, a lot of times people will say things like, oh, I have a great job. Well, what does that really mean? That doesn't mean anything to the visa officer. So how can you properly structure your answers that gives them the information that they're looking for? I actually think that short visa interviews are a good thing, not a bad thing, as long as they approve your visa, right? So you want to set up your answer in such a way that you are quickly approved your visa, not, an interview that drags on for, 10 minutes, 20 minutes. That's actually a bad thing, because when your interview gets really long, it means sometimes that the visa officer is actually digging around and trying to find a reason to deny your visa, not that they're trying to fully understand your situation. If they wanted to approve your visa, usually they can do that pretty quickly. And we also, especially for people who have been denied before, we have a special section that talks about, okay, what if you've been denied before? How should you answer that first question after a visa denial? That'll be really helpful. And Rajni, I meant to mention this earlier too, is that for all of our viewers right now and subscribers to the Immigration Talk Show, we actually have a special promo code for you where you can get 10% off of all of our F1 and B1, B2 visa coaching courses. You just have to use the promo code Immigration Show, and that'll give you 10%. Hopefully that will benefit you and give you the expert advice that you need so that you can take your time to watch all of our lessons on how to handle the visa interview, how to handle different types of questions, what should you do if you've been denied before. And then at the end of taking our course, you can also sit in on an exclusive question and answer session with a former visa officer where we do mock interviews with you and give you feedback on how you're answering your questions so that you feel fully ready for your next interview and that you can be confident, and also give the visa officer confidence to approve your visa.
Yes, guys, so make sure that you grab this opportunity and use the promo code Immigration Talk Show to get that 10% off on F-1 and B-1, B-2 visa coaching courses. So, yes, it's a great opportunity. So make sure to grab this opportunity and make use of it. And now let me quickly take a few more questions that are posted by our viewers. Let me take Lokesh's question. He just posted it. He says, if I'm denied an F-1 visa, does it negatively impact my chances of getting other types of visas like B-1, B-2, or H-1B in the future? How can I rebuild my profile after a rejection?
Lokesh, this is a great question. If you're denied a visa, any type of US visa, it will definitely negatively impact your chances of getting other types of visas. All visa decisions are in the US government systems, and it's accessible to all future visa officers who interview you, no matter what type of visa. And so if it's, you get a B1, B2 denial and you're applying for an F1 or vice versa, they will be able to access the case notes of the previous visa officer who sees, oh, this was the reason why this person was denied. And so this is why having a visa denial is sort of a red flag for future applications, which is why you have to make sure that you're ready for your next interview. Because once you have a number of visa denials, sometimes 2 or 3 or 4 visa denials, it makes it very difficult for the visa officer to come around and overrule those previous denials and approve them. Doesn't mean it's impossible, but it just becomes more difficult with increasing visa denials, because what the visa officer is thinking to themselves is, oh, 4 of my colleagues has already denied this person. Why should I now give this person a chance? So you want to make sure that you're giving it 110% at each visa interview and not just throwing it to chance.
Okay. So I hope you have also got your answer, Lokesh. Thank you so much for your question. If you have a follow-up, continue posting them. If you are not able to take them today, we will be taking them, in the next show that we will have with Mandy. So yes, please continue posting your questions. And let me take Yash's questions too. Mandy, he says, for B1, B2 visa, how much weight does a consular officer give to previous travel history? If I have visited other countries and always returned on time, but this didn't seem to matter during my interview. Should I emphasize this more in the future?
So, Yash, this is a great question. I will say travel history to other countries is one factor that the visa officer considers in your interview. This is definitely something they look at. It's also in your DS 160. There's a question about whether or not you've traveled to other countries, but not all countries are created equal. So if you're someone who's only been to 1 to 2 other countries and it's very close to your home country, sometimes that's less weight. Now, if you're someone who has been to really far off distances, you've been to Europe, you've been to Australia, you really have an established track record as a traveler, that's more helpful in your B1, B2 visa interview. And so should you emphasize this more in the future? I definitely would. If you've traveled since your last visa application and you've been denied, you can mention, last year I was able to travel to these countries, but you definitely want to make sure that you frame it in a way that's organic and that explains why you went there. Perhaps you went for a conference, or perhaps you just went for fun. You want to mention it, but you don't want to. I know that many people try to use travel history almost like, oh, I'm traveling just so I can get a US visa. And you don't want the visa officer to get a feel that that's why you're traveling. You want to explain to them, how long did you stay? What did you do there? And again, take a very organic and personal approach to how you're discussing your past travels.
Okay. Thank you so much again for that great tip, Mandy, Yash. I hope you take it, and I hope you do what Mandy said. And thank you so much for your question. And Mandy, now I would like to share my screen and maybe take a few questions that are from posted on the Facebook groups from our viewers. So,
Great.
okay, this anonymous member actually posted. He said, I am an international student in the US. I'm planning to travel to Vietnam with my friends. My F-1 is expired, so I'm planning to get a new F-1 visa in Vietnam, but my citizenship in different country. So I have been worried if I would be able to get a new F-1 in Vietnam since it's not my home country.
Hmm. Yeah, so this is a great question. Generally, without knowing more about this anonymous member's background, I would say don't just apply in a country outside of your home country while you're traveling there. The reason is because the visa officer in Vietnam may not know about the situation from your home country. So oftentimes, if they don't feel comfortable understanding your background, they may say, we can't make a decision on your case. You have to go back to your home country to apply. And then at that point, you're caught in a very, stressful situation where you might have to fly to your home country from Vietnam when you weren't planning to do that initially. You should do what the visa officer expects you to do, which is to go back and apply in your home country instead of doing it, in a third country. Also, I would say sometimes it's okay to apply it in third countries if you have a reason to be there. I get a lot of, potential clients who say, oh, okay, well, I have an Indian passport, but I actually, grew up in Vietnam, for example, and have a legal permanent residence there. Then it's okay to apply there because you've lived there and they understand your situation. But if you're just somebody who's traveling through, I think it's a little bit risky, especially with the incoming administration and a lot of, processes could change. So you just don't want to get stuck outside of the country for that reason.
Okay, thank you so much again for answering the question, Mandy. There's one more question posted by this anonymous member. And he says, hi, I have changed my status from H4 to F1 in the United States. I'm planning to go to
Mhm,
India for stamping, but option is coming for Dropbox and no interview. Is it
mhm.
okay to go for Dropbox?
Yes, I think it's okay to go for Dropbox, but please keep in mind that even if you're allowed to select Dropbox as an option, that sometimes they might still call you in for an interview. Just because you qualify for Dropbox doesn't mean there's, absolutely no way that you're going to get an interview. So just be prepared that in case they call you in, you still have to go in for the interview. But if that's an option, that's great. I think that it's always best to be able to go through Dropbox and not have to go in for the interview because it's less risk.
Okay. Thank you so much again for answering the question, Mandy. Okay, here is a lengthy one. So this person says, has anyone received a visa after changing their status before? This was my fourth visit to the United States as a tourist. When I changed my status to F1 student, after obtaining an F1 visa, I completed both a language school and a certificate program during my third year. While waiting for my OPT, I learned that my father was in intensive care. So I returned to my home country. Now that my father has recovered, I would like to go back to the US. Should I explain that as I want to use my OPT, or should I apply for an F1 visa by stating that I plan to pursue a master's degree as per my long term plan? I'm open to your advice.
Yeah, so this is a great question because I generally so it's very likely that at your next interview, it's going to be a very tough interview because visa officers don't like to see people change status in the US, especially from a B1, B2 visa to an F1 visa. Because visa officers always view situations through an American lens, and in their minds, they would not go for vacation in Europe and then all of a sudden decide, hey, I like it here. I'm just going to stay here and study. Americans don't do that. So to them, they're going to think that this is a very unusual situation, and they're probably going to definitely question you about this. And so you would need to definitely prepare and explain what mindset you went through. Why did you decide to switch to the F1 visa status? instead of just coming back to your home country and directly applying for an F-1. So preparing for this visa interview is going to be very important for you. I would highly recommend it because it's going to be a tough interview. And for all of our listeners out there, if you're someone who is in the US on a B1, B2 visa and you're thinking about studying in the US, do it the way that the visa officer likes you to do it, which is go back to your home country and apply for an F-1. That's what they want people to do instead of changing your status. I think for so many people, they don't understand that the US visa and immigration process is actually handled by two completely different agencies. You have USCIS, which handles all change of status applications and adjustment of status applications. And then you have the State Department, which handles all the overseas interviews at US consulates. And just because USCIS approves a change of status application doesn't mean that the State Department or the visa officer will agree with that decision. And so that's why you've got to make sure that you're ready for this interview.
Wow, okay. Thank you so much again for answering the question, Mandy. Let me take maybe one more. So, this question is again posted by an anonymous member, and it's been some time since he posted this. But let me read it out. He says, I just entered USA on an F1 visa, and my program will start in 30 days. But I need to transfer to another English school within this time to keep my service record active and my F1 visa valid. But I don't know whether the English school would accept my transfer in. Can anyone guide me, please? What do you have to say?
Yeah. So this sounds like a little bit of a complicated situation. Generally, if you have an approved F1 visa, I would highly recommend that you go to the school that is listed on your visa application, on your visa, and the one that you have your I-20 for. The reason is because I've seen people get into a lot of trouble where they enter the US on an F1 visa and they immediately transfer to another school. Because this could be a problem later when you go in for your next interview, because the visa officer will be able to see, oh, the degree that you completed was not the one that you applied for at your last interview. Why did you do this? And when it's done so quickly within when you first enter and within the 30 days, then they're going to think that perhaps you intentionally did this, always planning to change schools. And that really makes the visa officer suspicious. The visa interview itself, you should see this as it's kind of like a exercise in trust. They're testing you to see if you're going to be honest and you're going to do what you say you're going to do. And if you make these big changes right when you get to the country, that's going to make the visa officer suspicious and make your future visa applications more complicated. So in this case, I don't know the details about, why you need to do this to keep your service record active, but it sounds like if you can, try to stay with the school that you're already at. Maybe you can apply for a transfer later on, maybe a year in or 2 years in. That's much more reasonable. But if you feel like you have to change, I would just work with the English school to make sure that the transfer would be accepted. But you got to worry about whether or not your visa will be approved next time you leave the country and come back in. So you definitely want to be extra prepared.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much for answering all these questions, Mandy. Thank you so much. It was great having you. And your each answer was so detailed and so insightful. I really loved doing this show with you. I hope this was your first time in immigration and job stock show. I hope you enjoyed it as much as we did. And yes, guys, if you want to get in touch with attorney Mandy, so you can email her. Her email ID is info@zfvisa.com. I would like to repeat the email, info@zfvisa.com. You can also visit her website, which is www.zfvisaguides.com. So make sure you write an email to her. Make sure that you use the promo code and you get your hands on those coaching courses of F1 and B1, B2 visa coaching courses, and visit her website. Yes, and to get 10% off on these courses, you can use the promo code Immigration Show. And yes, grab this opportunity and make sure that you make the best of this opportunity. Thank you so much again, Mandy, for being here. I really enjoyed this show with you and hoping to see you soon. back.
Thank you so much, Rajni. Yeah, it was a pleasure to be here, and thank you for all of our viewers. I really wish you the best on your U.S. visa interview process. I hope that you're successful, and I just want you to know that the U.S. welcomes you.
Thank you so much for those lovely and kind words. And we are going to see you soon again with maybe another great topic. And we can either do, B1, B2 separately and F1 separately, because a lot of students do come up in our comment sections and post their comments saying, please do a session with an attorney on F1. So because, now after some time, the student season, the F1 season will also come up. So a lot of students will be looking forward to get a lot of answers from the best attorneys, and who would be better than you to answer all these questions. So we would love for you to come back and do another show on immigration and jobs talk show. But for now, thank you so much, Mandy, for being here.
Thank you so much, Ken. Can't wait to be back.
Thank you so much. Guys, I hope you also enjoyed the session, and thank you so much for posting all your questions in the comments below. Continue to post your questions, because we'll be getting back Mandy very soon, and we'll be taking those questions in maybe that session. But for now, I'll have to take your leave, and make sure that you subscribe to Immigration and Jobs Talk Show and come back at 4 p.m. To enjoy Immigration Daily Dose. But for now, like I said, I'll have to take your leave. You guys keep watching and keep subscribing to Immigration and Jobs Talk Show. I'm Rajni Parara, your host. Bye.